Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
The majestic Rocky Mountains, with their snow-capped peaks and sprawling valleys, stand as silent witnesses to the unfolding stories of countless civilizations. Their rugged beauty, etched by millennia of natural forces, masks a deeper narrative, one often overlooked in the annals of American history. Beneath the towering pines and cascading streams lie echoes of a forgotten past, where black tribes once thrived, weaving their existence into the fabric of the land. These communities, resilient and resourceful, navigated the challenging terrain, forging identities deeply rooted in tradition, survival, and a profound connection to nature. Yet, as the tides of history shifted, their stories faded into obscurity, overshadowed by dominant narratives that rarely acknowledge their presence. This article seeks to breathe life into those forgotten histories, illuminating the rich and complex legacies of the Black tribes of the Rocky Mountains. Long before European settlers ventured westward, the expanse of the Rocky Mountains was home to a mosaic of indigenous cultures. Among these were communities of African descent who, through migration, displacement, and sometimes escape from bondage, found refuge and autonomy in the rugged isolation of the mountains. These tribes were not monolithic. They were diverse in their languages, customs, and ways of life, shaped by both African heritage and adaptation to their mountainous environment. Their societies were characterized by intricate social structures, spiritual beliefs intertwined with nature, and survival strategies that reflected an intimate understanding of the land. The presence of Black tribes in the Rocky Mountains can be traced back to the early intersections of African, Native American, and European histories. As early as the 16th century, African individuals and communities began to appear in the New World, brought through the transatlantic slave trade or arriving as free men and women seeking new opportunities. Some escaped enslavement, journeying westward to evade recapture, while others were integrated into Native American tribes through alliances, marriage, or shared struggles against European colonizers. This blending of cultures gave rise to unique communities that bore the hallmarks of both African and indigenous traditions. In the seclusion of the Rocky Mountains, these Black tribes developed societies that were remarkably self-sufficient. Their knowledge of agriculture, hunting, and foraging allowed them to sustain themselves in an often unforgiving landscape. They cultivated crops suited to the mountain climate, hunted game that roamed the dense forests, and gathered medicinal plants, weaving a sustainable existence that honored both their African roots and their new homeland. Oral traditions, music, and art flourished, serving as vessels for preserving history, teaching younger generations, and maintaining a sense of identity and continuity. Trade routes crisscrossed the Rocky Mountains, and Black tribes engaged in commerce with neighboring indigenous communities. They exchanged goods such as handcrafted tools, woven textiles, and agricultural produce, fostering relationships that were both economic and diplomatic. These interactions not only enriched their material culture, but also facilitated the exchange of ideas, spiritual beliefs, and cultural practices. The mountain passes became conduits of cultural fusion, where languages blended and traditions merged, creating a vibrant tapestry of life that defied simplistic categorizations. Despite their resilience, the Black tribes of the Rocky Mountains faced relentless challenges as European expansion encroached upon their lands. The westward push brought waves of settlers, soldiers, and opportunists driven by the promise of land and wealth. With them came policies of displacement, forced assimilation, and violence that upended indigenous ways of life. The Black tribes, already marginalized by prevailing racial prejudices, found themselves doubly vulnerable. They were often excluded from treaties and legal protections afforded to other native groups, leaving them exposed to land seizures and systemic erasure. The advent of the gold rushes in the 19th century intensified these pressures. Prospectors flooded the region, carving paths through once secluded valleys and disrupting the delicate balance of local ecosystems. The Black tribes, like many indigenous peoples, were driven from their ancestral territories, their communities fragmented, and their cultural practices suppressed. Many were forced into labor for mining operations, subjected to harsh conditions that stripped them of their autonomy. Others retreated deeper into the mountains, seeking refuge in remote areas where they could maintain their way of life, albeit under increasing strain. Colonial narratives and historical documentation further contributed to the erasure of Black tribes from the collective memory of the Rocky Mountains. Historians of the era, often influenced by racial biases, neglected to record the existence and contributions of these communities. Where mentions did occur, they were frequently distorted or minimized, casting Black tribes as peripheral or anomalous figures in the broader story of westward expansion. This historical amnesia not only obscured their past but also denied their descendants recognition and a sense of belonging in the American narrative. Yet, traces of these forgotten tribes endure. Archaeological evidence, oral histories, and surviving cultural artifacts hint at the rich lives once led by these communities. Petroglyphs carved into mountain stones, remnants of dwellings tucked into highland alcoves, and stories passed down through generations all speak to a vibrant, though hidden, legacy. In recent years, scholars and descendants alike have begun to unearth these stories, challenging the dominant historical frameworks and reclaiming a history long denied. Understanding the forgotten Black tribes of the Rocky Mountains is not merely an academic exercise. It is an act of restoration. It acknowledges the resilience of communities that forged identities against the currents of oppression and erasure. It honors the cultural innovations born from the confluence of African and indigenous traditions. And it challenges us to confront the incomplete narratives that shape our understanding of history. By illuminating these obscured pasts, we gain a fuller, richer perspective on the diverse human experiences that have shaped the Rocky Mountains and, by extension, the American story. As we stand before the grandeur of the Rockies, it becomes imperative to listen for the silent voices that echo through the canyons and forests, to seek out the stories etched not only in stone but also in memory, tradition, and spirit. The forgotten Black tribes of the Rocky Mountains call us to remember, to piece together the fragments of history and recognize the profound legacies that continue to shape the land and its people. In doing so, we honor not only their past but also our collective future, grounded in a more inclusive and truthful reckoning with history.